The Arbatel of Magic stands as one of the most intriguing and influential texts in the Western magical tradition, particularly notable for its optimistic and ethical approach to ceremonial magic. To fully appreciate its significance, we must first delve deeply into its historical background and origins, exploring its publication history, the mysteries surrounding its authorship, the cultural and intellectual milieu of Renaissance magic in which it appeared, and its distinctive place among the grimoires of its time. The Arbatel of Magic was first printed in 1575 in Basel, Switzerland. Its initial publication was unusual, marked by a curious lack of detail about the author or source. The book was published in Latin under the title Arbatel de Magia Veterum, which can be roughly translated as Arbatel on the Magic of the Ancients. This title reflected the text's explicit connection to a tradition of ancient, pure, and benevolent magic, distinguished from the darker or more secretive occult practices commonly feared at the time. The Basel edition was soon followed by other editions and translations, including into German and later English, helping the text reach a wide audience across Europe. Unlike many grimoires which often circulated as handwritten manuscripts for centuries before printing, the Arbatel appeared suddenly as a printed text, which contributed to its rapid dissemination and impact. Despite its sudden appearance, the Arbatel quickly garnered attention for its accessible style and positive tone. While most grimoires were focused on complex rituals, demonology, or secret knowledge, the Arbatel emphasized practical spiritual wisdom and ethical conduct as prerequisites for magical work. This distinction made it stand out immediately to scholars, magicians, and mystics alike. One of the enduring puzzles surrounding the Arbatel is the identity of its author or compiler. The original edition provided no explicit author's name, leading to centuries of speculation. Scholars and occultists have proposed various theories, some suggesting it was written by an anonymous adept steeped in Christian Hermeticism, others speculating connections to known figures of the time involved in esoteric circles. Some have pointed to the possibility that the Arbatel was a compilation of older magical and philosophical traditions, woven together by a Renaissance humanist familiar with Neoplatonic and Christian mystical thought. The text itself claims to derive from ancient sources and emphasizes the magic of the ancients, but no direct ancient manuscript precursor has ever been conclusively identified. Another theory links the Arbatel to the Rosicrucian movement, which emerged slightly later in the early 17th century, due to shared themes of spiritual purity, divine wisdom, and angelic hierarchies. However, this connection remains speculative, as the Arbatel predates the public emergence of Rosicrucian manifestos. Despite the mystery, the authorship ambiguity has not diminished the text's authority or influence. Instead, it adds to the Arbatel's aura as a mystical and authoritative work purportedly channeling ancient wisdom. To understand the Arbatel's creation and impact, it is essential to situate it within the broader context of Renaissance magic and the occult revival sweeping through Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries. The Renaissance was a time of rediscovery. Classical texts, ancient philosophies, and forgotten knowledge were being unearthed, translated, and studied with fresh enthusiasm. This intellectual awakening extended into the realm of spirituality and magic, giving rise to a renewed interest in Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Kabbalah, alchemy, and other esoteric disciplines. Magic in the Renaissance was not universally condemned as heresy but was often seen as a legitimate path to understanding divine realities and achieving spiritual transformation. Figures like Marsilio Ficino, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, and Cornelius Agrippa played pivotal roles in elevating magic from mere superstition to a philosophical and theological pursuit. The Arbatel fits squarely into this milieu, representing a strand of magical thought that emphasized angelic wisdom, divine order, and moral purity. It reflects a synthesis of Christian mysticism with classical pagan philosophy, offering a system of magic that was less about coercion and control and more about cooperation with divine intelligences. Unlike other grimoires focused on demonic entities or secretive invocations, the Arbatel champions a positive and hopeful vision of magic, one that seeks to align the practitioner with heavenly forces and divine will. This outlook was very much in tune with Renaissance ideals of human potential and spiritual ascent. When compared to other magical texts and grimoires of the 16th century and earlier, the Arbatel occupies a uniquely optimistic and ethical niche. Many grimoires of the time, such as the Key of Solomon, the Leamington, and the grimoires of Honorius, focused extensively on ritual complexity, the summoning and commanding of spirits or demons, and secret knowledge often associated with fear, power, and control. These books frequently carried a dark or ambivalent tone, sometimes involving morally questionable practices. In stark contrast, the Arbatel rejects harmful magic and emphasizes the necessity of virtue, humility, and divine favor. Its spells and invocations primarily involve angelic beings known as the Olympian spirits, who are described as benevolent and deeply connected to the order of the cosmos. The Arbatel teaches that magic should serve spiritual growth and the common good, not selfish ends or manipulative power. Furthermore, the Arbatel's prose is remarkably clear and direct, avoiding obscure jargon or cryptic symbolism that characterized many contemporaneous texts. This accessibility helped it gain popularity among serious Christian magicians who sought a path consistent with their faith. The Arbatel can thus be seen as a bridge between the older medieval magical tradition and the emerging Christian mystical and philosophical currents of the Renaissance. It set a precedent for later esoteric works that would integrate spirituality, ethics, and practical magic, influencing movements such as Rosicrucianism, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and modern ceremonial magic. The Arbatel of Magic is much more than a mere grimoire. Its 1575 publication heralded a fresh, hopeful approach to magic grounded in Christian virtue and cosmic harmony. Despite the mysteries of its authorship, the text reflects the vibrant intellectual and spiritual currents of the Renaissance, carving out a unique place among magical traditions. Its optimistic tone and ethical emphasis continue to inspire and challenge practitioners and scholars, cementing its legacy as a foundational work in Western esotericism. The Arbatel of Magic distinguishes itself not only by its optimistic and spiritual tone but also by its clear and accessible structure and profound core teachings. Unlike many grimoires of its time, which often present a labyrinthine array of spells, sigils, and rituals, the Arbatel is organized in a straightforward manner, focusing on angelic hierarchy, moral and spiritual preparation, and practical methods of magical invocation. This section will examine the organization of the text, especially its presentation of the 9 Olympian spirits and their roles, its emphasis on divine, angelic forces rather than demonic entities, the central themes of moral conduct and spiritual purity, and the practical instructions it offers for communicating with higher spiritual beings. One of the most distinctive features of the Arbatel is its emphasis on the 9 Olympian spirits. These spirits represent a celestial hierarchy, each governing specific cosmic, spiritual, and earthly domains. The text presents these spirits as benevolent and powerful agents of divine will, serving as intermediaries between God and humanity. The 9 Olympian spirits are 1. Aratron, associated with the planet Saturn, embodying wisdom, authority, and longevity. 2. Bether, linked to Jupiter, symbolizing justice, mercy, and expansion. 3. Phaleg, connected to Mars, representing strength, courage, and protection. 4. Arc, related to the Sun, embodying power, vitality, and illumination. 5. Haggith, tied to Venus, governing love, beauty, and harmony. 6. Ophiel, associated with Mercury, representing knowledge, communication, and trade. 7. Full, linked to the moon, symbolizing fertility, growth, and change. 8. Orobas, an enigmatic spirit linked with truth, prophecy, and discernment. 9. Vine, a spirit connected to wisdom, divination, and mystical insight. Each spirit presides over a specific day of the week and a set of spiritual influences, forming a cosmological framework that practitioners could invoke depending on their needs and intentions. The Arbatel provides instructions on how to connect with these spirits through prayer, meditation, and ritual. Their roles are not coercive, rather, the practitioner is encouraged to align themselves with the spirits through virtue and reverence, creating a harmonious channel for divine influence. A defining hallmark of the Arbatel is its clear preference for angelic and divine forces over demonic entities. In contrast to many grimoires of the era, such as the Lemiston or grimoires of Honorius, which often feature complex rituals to summon and control demons or infernal spirits, the Arbatel expressly rejects demonic magic and the use of malevolent spirits. The text reflects a deeply Christian worldview, emphasizing the power and purity of angels as God's messengers and servants. The spirits invoked are seen as extensions of divine providence, working only for the good of humanity and the spiritual elevation of the practitioner. This theological stance elevates the Arbatel above the common suspicion and fear surrounding magical practices in the Renaissance. It positions magic as a sacred science aligned with God's order rather than a dangerous or forbidden art dabbling in evil forces. This angelic focus also reflects the Renaissance fascination with the celestial hierarchy, a layered universe in which God rules supreme, with angels governing various levels of existence. By invoking the Olympian spirits, the Arbatel teaches practitioners to participate consciously in this cosmic order, promoting harmony and spiritual growth. The Arbatel repeatedly stresses that magical power is inseparable from moral virtue and spiritual readiness. Unlike occult texts that promise immediate power through secret knowledge or arcane rites, the Arbatel insists that ethical behavior, humility, and purity of heart are essential conditions for successful magic. The text places great importance on the practitioner's character, advising that only those who live justly, practice charity, and seek wisdom with sincerity can truly harness the forces of the spirits. This theme reflects the broader Renaissance ideal of the philosopher magus, a magician who is also a sage, healer, and moral exemplar. Spiritual preparation involves prayer, fasting, meditation, and living according to Christian virtues. The Arbatel teaches that the divine beings will not respond to those who seek power for selfish or harmful purposes. Instead, the magician must cultivate inner harmony and align their will with God's to gain favor and access to the spiritual realm. This emphasis on ethics elevates the Arbatel beyond mere magic into a path of spiritual transformation. Magic is not an end in itself but a means to grow closer to God, gain wisdom, and improve oneself and the world. Despite its high spiritual ideals, the Arbatel is also a practical manual, providing clear instructions for invoking and communicating with the Olympian spirits and other divine intelligences. The text outlines rituals involving prayer, fasting, and the use of specific divine names and words of power. It encourages the practitioner to engage in regular spiritual disciplines, maintaining a pure environment and mindset when performing invocations. Unlike darker grimoires, the Arbatel does not require complex or secretive magical paraphernalia such as pentacles with obscure symbols or dangerous rituals. Instead, it emphasizes sincerity, faith, and reverence. The text also describes methods of receiving divine knowledge through visions, dreams, and inspired insight, when the practitioner has properly prepared themselves and gained the spirit's favor. The approach is cooperative rather than commanding. The magician petitions the spirits humbly and invites their guidance, rather than attempting to bind or coerce them. This reflects the Arbatel's overall tone of harmony and respect between human and divine realms. The structure and core teachings of the Arbatel of Magic reveal a deeply spiritual, ethical, and practical system. It is organized around the 9 Olympian spirits, angelic beings who mediate divine power in the cosmos. The text's emphasis on moral conduct and purity underscores that magical practice is inseparable from spiritual growth. And its clear, accessible instructions invite sincere practitioners into a cooperative relationship with benevolent spiritual forces, promising not only magical efficacy but personal transformation. The Arbatel of Magic is not merely a practical manual of ritual and invocation, it is deeply rooted in the philosophical and theological currents of its time, reflecting a profound synthesis of Christian mysticism and Neoplatonic thought. Understanding the Arbatel requires a careful exploration of its underlying worldview, a spiritual cosmology that defines the nature of God, angels, and spirits, and that elevates personal virtue and the soul's ascent to divine wisdom as the highest aims of magical practice. Moreover, the text is explicit in its ethical commitments, rigorously rejecting harmful or malevolent magic and emphasizing the moral responsibilities of the practitioner. At its core, the Arbatel is a Christian mystical text. It embraces the belief in a single, transcendent, and benevolent God, the source of all creation and the ultimate goal of the soul's journey. Throughout its writings, God is portrayed as the omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent divine being, who governs the cosmos through a hierarchy of angels and spirits. This Christian foundation is enriched and expanded by the integration of Neoplatonic philosophy, which had experienced a resurgence during the Renaissance. Neoplatonism, drawing heavily on the works of Plotinus and other late antique philosophers, posits a layered universe emanating from the One, the ineffable ultimate principle. This emanationist model resonated with Christian theologians who saw parallels between the Neoplatonic hierarchy and the Christian celestial order. The Arbatel adopts this framework to articulate the structure of the spiritual world, describing a cosmos arranged in levels of perfection descending from God to angels and then to human souls. This synthesis offers a comprehensive spiritual map that situates magic within the broader divine plan. Magic is understood not as a manipulation of forces but as a harmonious cooperation with the cosmic order. The Neoplatonic influence also introduces the concept of the soul's ascent through stages of purification and illumination, an idea central to Renaissance Christian mysticism. The practitioner of Arbatel magic is invited to embark on an inner journey of transformation, progressively uniting with divine wisdom and truth. The Arbatel presents a detailed and ordered hierarchy of spiritual beings, reflecting both biblical tradition and Neoplatonic cosmology. At the summit stands God, the absolute unity and source of all existence. Below God are the angels, pure, immaterial intelligences who serve as messengers and agents of divine will. Within this angelic realm, the 9 Olympian spirits occupy a special place, each governing particular aspects of the cosmos and human life. These spirits act as intermediaries between God and mankind, guiding, protecting, and illuminating the practitioner who seeks their aid. Unlike many magical traditions that focus on a dualistic battle between good and evil spirits, the Arbatel emphasizes a unified divine order. Angels and spirits are seen as manifestations of God's benevolence, each performing their appointed roles within the celestial machinery. The nature of these spirits is fundamentally good and aligned with divine purpose. The Arbatel makes clear that invoking these beings is not an act of coercion but one of respectful petition and cooperation, conducted through prayer, ethical conduct, and spiritual purity. This hierarchical vision reinforces the idea that the cosmos is an intelligible and moral system, governed by divine laws accessible through study, meditation, and virtuous living. A hallmark of the Arbatel's philosophy is the central role it assigns to personal virtue as the foundation of magical practice. The text insists that only those who cultivate purity of heart, humility, charity, and justice can successfully engage with spiritual forces. This emphasis is deeply rooted in Christian ethics, which regard the soul's moral development as essential to its salvation and communion with God. Magic, in the Arbatel, is not a shortcut to power or wealth but a sacred discipline aimed at aligning the practitioner's will with the divine. The soul's ascent toward divine wisdom is portrayed as a gradual process of purification and enlightenment, where the magician sheds ignorance, selfishness, and sin to embrace truth and divine love. This transformative journey is not only spiritual but practical, reflected in the Arbatel's prescriptions for prayer, meditation, and ethical living. This ascent mirrors the Neoplatonic idea of the soul's return to the One, a mystical union that transcends mundane existence. The Arbatel encourages seekers to view magic as a tool for self-improvement and spiritual realization, leading ultimately to divine illumination and eternal peace. Perhaps most striking about the Arbatel is its clear ethical stance regarding the use of magic. The text categorically rejects any form of harmful, coercive, or malevolent magic. It warns practitioners that magic used for selfish gain, manipulation, or to harm others is not only ineffective but spiritually dangerous. This ethical injunction distinguishes the Arbatel from many other grimoires, which often include instructions for summoning and controlling spirits for personal advantage regardless of moral considerations. The Arbatel views such practices as contrary to the divine order and harmful to the soul's spiritual progress. It teaches that genuine magical power is inseparable from holiness and virtue and that divine spirits will not assist those who seek to abuse their gifts. This moral framework situates the Arbatel firmly within the Christian mystical tradition, where magic is seen as a sacred art to be practiced responsibly and reverently. By emphasizing virtue, humility, and charity, the Arbatel elevates magic from a potentially dangerous craft into a disciplined path of spiritual growth, ethical living, and divine communion. The philosophical and theological foundations of the Arbatel of Magic reveal a deeply spiritual text that harmonizes Christian mysticism with Renaissance Neoplatonism. It articulates a cosmic hierarchy governed by a benevolent God and mediated by angelic spirits. Central to its teachings is the conviction that personal virtue and the soul's ascent to divine wisdom are indispensable for magical practice. Moreover, it firmly rejects harmful magic, underscoring the ethical responsibilities of the practitioner. Through this profound synthesis of faith, philosophy, and ethics, the Arbatel offers a vision of magic not as mere power but as a sacred journey toward union with the divine. The Arbatel of Magic, since its first appearance in 1575, has exerted a profound and lasting influence on the development of Western esotericism. Its optimistic tone, ethical emphasis, and focus on angelic spirits distinguished it from many contemporaneous grimoires and helped shape the course of occult thought and magical practice for centuries to come. This section explores the Arbatel's impact on later magical and mystical traditions, its foundational role in modern ceremonial magic and angelology, the ways in which it continues to inspire contemporary occultists, and the scholarly perspectives and critical reception that have accompanied its study over time. The Arbatel emerged during the height of the Renaissance occult revival, a period characterized by renewed interest in Hermeticism, Kabbalah, alchemy, and Neoplatonism. Within this fertile environment, the Arbatel found a receptive audience among thinkers and practitioners who sought a spiritualized, ethically grounded approach to magic. Perhaps one of the most notable groups influenced by the Arbatel were the Rosicrucians, the legendary and semi-mystical fraternity that appeared in early 17th century Europe. Though the Rosicrucian manifestos surfaced several decades after the Arbatel's publication, scholars identify strong thematic parallels. Both emphasize spiritual purification, the pursuit of divine wisdom, and the engagement with angelic and cosmic intelligences. The Arbatel's angelology, particularly its system of Olympian spirits, provided a blueprint for many Hermetic and Rosicrucian teachings that followed. Its message of magic as a cooperative, benevolent, and morally rigorous practice helped distinguish these movements from the more cynical or fear-based magical traditions. Hermeticists in the 16th and 17th centuries, inspired by the rediscovered Corpus Hermeticum, also embraced the Arbatel's synthesis of Christian mysticism and Neoplatonism. The text's clear articulation of divine hierarchies and its optimistic outlook on human potential deeply resonated with Hermetic ideals of spiritual ascent and gnosis. In short, the Arbatel contributed significantly to the intellectual and spiritual ferment that gave rise to many of the key esoteric movements of early modern Europe, influencing figures such as Heinrich von Rath, Robert Fludd, and later Christian Rosenkreuz legends. Moving forward into the modern era, the Arbatel continued to exert a formative influence on ceremonial magic and angelology. Its focus on angelic spirits as primary intermediaries between humanity and the divine inspired later magical systems that centered angels in ritual practice. The revival of ceremonial magic in the 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in organizations such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, drew heavily upon earlier texts like the Arbatel. The Golden Dawn's elaborate rituals, hierarchical angelic correspondences, and emphasis on spiritual purification echo themes and structures found in the Arbatel. Moreover, the Arbatel's emphasis on moral virtue as a prerequisite for magical power helped shape the ethical frameworks adopted by modern magical orders. Its rejection of demonic magic and focus on cooperation with benevolent spirits became foundational for many contemporary ceremonial magicians who sought to distance themselves from popular stereotypes of dark or malevolent occultism. In angelology, the Arbatel remains a cornerstone text. Its catalogue of the 9 Olympian spirits, each associated with planetary influences and specific spiritual attributes, has been incorporated into subsequent angelic lore, occult grimoires, and even modern New Age angelic teachings. Through its clear systematization of angelic ranks and functions, the Arbatel helped establish a language and cosmology that continue to inform the magical and devotional work of practitioners today. In contemporary occult circles, the Arbatel is often celebrated as a gentle grimoire, valued for its accessible style, ethical clarity, and spiritual depth. It stands apart from more arcane or fear-inducing grimoires, attracting practitioners who seek a harmonious and virtuous approach to magical work. Modern occultists appreciate the Arbatel for its practical instructions on invocation, its emphasis on personal development, and its integration of Christian mystical concepts with magical practice. It is frequently studied alongside other foundational texts as a key example of Renaissance magic spiritual ideals. The text's angelology continues to inspire modern angel practitioners, from ceremonial magicians to New Age healers, who see the Olympian spirits as powerful guides for healing, divination, and spiritual growth. Some contemporary interpretations also highlight the Arbatel's ecological and cosmic vision, noting how its emphasis on harmony and cooperation with the divine cosmos resonates with today's holistic spiritualities. Furthermore, the Arbatel is increasingly the subject of academic interest and scholarly commentary, helping to bridge the gap between esoteric practitioners and historians of religion. From its initial publication, the Arbatel has intrigued scholars and occultists alike, though its reception has varied depending on cultural and intellectual contexts. Early responses to the Arbatel were mixed. Its Christian tone made it more acceptable to certain audiences than other grimoires, yet its open magical content still elicited suspicion and occasional censorship. In the 19th and 20th centuries, as the academic study of magic and esotericism developed, scholars began to recognize the Arbatel's unique position as a transitional text linking medieval and Renaissance magic with modern occultism. Notable historians of magic, such as Francis Yates and A.E. Waite, acknowledged the Arbatel's importance for understanding Renaissance spirituality and the evolution of magical thought. More recently, academic studies have focused on its philosophical underpinnings, textual history, and influence on various occult movements. Researchers emphasize its ethical dimensions, angelology, and synthesis of mystical traditions. Today, the Arbatel is regarded as a vital historical document that challenges simplistic views of magic as mere superstition or dark arts. It offers a nuanced picture of magic as a spiritually rich and morally engaged practice, deeply intertwined with the history of Western religious and philosophical thought. The Arbatel of Magic stands as a monumental work whose influence has rippled through centuries of magical and mystical traditions. From inspiring the Rosicrucians and Hermeticists to shaping modern ceremonial magic and angelology, it has provided a framework of ethical, spiritual, and practical magic that remains relevant today. Modern practitioners and scholars continue to explore its depths, affirming its place as one of the most enduring and uplifting grimoires in the Western esoteric canon.